Roll for Crit is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Come roll with us at patreon.com/rollforcrit.
We have finally entered March, and hopefully wherever you are, the weather is starting to warm up. While we wait for spring to actually arrive, let's take a look at what cool Kickstarters are out there for the week of March 1st, 2021. Our first pick is designed for those who want to go head-to-head with their fellow Norse gods, and that's Ragnarocks from Grey Fox Games and the same designer as Santorini. In this game, each player will have their own group of Vikings, and on your turn, you'll get to move one Viking a certain number of distance in a straight line. Then you will actually place a runestone. The idea behind the game is you're going to try to move your Vikings and place the runestone strategically, because the game ends when each Viking is separated from each other with the runestone, sort of like making a fence. You're then going to score how many hexes are in each of your Vikings' territories and see who was able to gain the most land. Now, that seems simple and basic enough, but once you've got the core concepts down, you can start adding the myth cards. This is where the game's really going to sort of get that extra twists and variabilities, because you're going to be able to get some of those Norse gods or ancient beasts to help you out, or maybe just mess up your opponent. They can maybe swap some Vikings around, maybe place an extra wall or two. It depends on which ones you have. Now, this is going to come to retail, but in this special edition, it looks like, I can't tell exactly Kickstarter exclusive, or you might be able to buy them later on strictly from Grey Fox, of special translucent rocks, the runestones, as well as maybe some other extra myth cards. I have played Santorini. It's a very interesting sort of this back and forth game of trying to get on top, and I love this idea of making weird little fences and seeing how that plays out. And definitely, same thing with Santorini. Once you add those myth-like cards, you know, the things that really give you the asymmetrical powers, that's when the game becomes really fun. Because depending on what your pair-up is, it plays very differently. And a great way if you are into like Norse mythology games, but don't want to like have a huge war battle game or something.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's right along the same lines as Santorini. And I even liked it before you add those cards, which definitely are the thing that make this more of the gamery kind of game. But just as in the vein of kind of a more traditional, almost like an Othello or a Go, not quite that traditional, but that sort of style of game, or Hive maybe, of just the purity of looking at the board and placing stuff and just trying to close things off. And it seems like a very interesting back and forth puzzle of reacting to each other and seeing what you do. Good, cool stuff going on, and it looks very, very pretty. I mean, definitely the presentation does a lot to make this one stand out.
It is fun that you are playing on a board that's on top of, well, I guess you could say the stump of the world tree, where it's where you actually store all your components. Now, if you're looking to get this through Kickstarter, you can back it now for $45.
Chamber of Wonders from LMS Light is a new game in which players are competing to display the coolest and weirdest, most grotesque wonders of all in Victorian London. You will be collecting cards of different types, monsters, books, artifacts, all sorts of strange things. And it's essentially a set collection game. You are trying to get different cards, different types, and arrange them in different ways in your own Chamber of Wonders. And depending on which types they are, they will score points in different ways. You are also placing agents onto the board at different locations in order to go out and collect these wonders, and depending on which location you go to, a different mini game will trigger. So at one, it might be an auction between all players to grab a new wonder. One may be more of a gambling type of thing, where players are trying to predict what cards are going to come out of the deck. All sorts of different activities that will involve everybody at the table, and depending on what you have in hand or what you're looking for or what you think the other players are trying to do, some of them may be more advantageous to you than others. And at the end of the game, you're going to score for what you have in your little Chamber of Wonders. I thought this was it's a really cool style, a very fun concept, the kind of thing we like with set collection with something weird and a little bit offbeat. And it's those mini games for me that make this one intriguing, because in addition to just that set collection aspect, you're also doing something different every single round, and you are taking a look at your cards and using them in a very different way that I think could create for some interesting scenarios.
I always enjoy collecting weird things, especially in games like this, but it does sound like that extra bit of mini games adds more than just, well, I'm going to buy this pile. because I want it or I don't want you to get this. You have to actually think maybe like, okay, I'm not maybe strong at that mini game for whatever reason, whether it's resources or something. I guess I'll have to sacrifice that. It's not simply just building up the collection. So at least it makes it stand out a bit more than maybe some of the other games we had that do a similar thing.
And this is another one with a pretty cool presentation. You actually have these 3D chambers to display your wonders in, which is nice. You can check this one out. You can get the collector's edition right now for about $43 US, or look even higher up. They have a deluxe version and other goodies too.
Skyline Express is a Kickstarter that has a lot to offer. In the base game, you will play as a captain of one of your own ships, trying to make sure you manage your passengers correctly in order to get the most points. On your turn, you're going to pick one of the available passengers to add to your ship. You will place them in their own seat, hoping to fill up different carriage houses. Now, there will be goals for each round trying to get certain configurations, such as maybe getting a red and a green passenger near the aisles, near the windows, or maybe people of the same color next to each other. There are also going to be some unique passengers that when you draft these gray tiles, you're actually going to choose a preference they like from the available pool. These could be things like being in a room with everyone of the similar color or making sure that everyone's different. It depends on what you choose. Now, there will be an action table which you can spend action cubes for in order to help maybe rearrange your board, such as swapping two passengers, swapping one with one on the board, or moving one to a new seat. But they are limited in the number of action cubes you have, so you're going to have to plan accordingly and maybe try not to rely on that too much. This game also will include an expansion you can choose to add, which adds luggage. Each passenger now comes with a colored cube of luggage, and when you take that passenger, you also add that luggage to a new board, which will hold all the luggage. Now, each row can only hold the same color, so if you're unable to place the luggage that you picked up with the passenger, it gets thrown off, which really stinks for that passenger that their luggage is not coming with them. There's also going to be a roll and write you could pick up. This is a little bit simpler. You'll actually start the game rolling all the dice, and depending on what dice you roll, it'll decide what are the goals for that game. When you draft dice, the color that you choose will tell you what passenger you're going to color in on the board with that colored pen, while the number will tell you what action you're going to do. I love that they have all these different things. You got a base game, you got an expansion, and you got a roll and write. As for the game itself, I love the matching aspect, and what really I think helps it out is the fact that each round you get new goals and things. So maybe you're like, oh, I did well this round. I got like every single red passenger and all the right organizations. The next goals require a lot of blue, and you're like, oh, time to use those action cubes because I need to change up my my passengers.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. Who doesn't like a good airship? And I like these types of games where you are trying to collect different things and organize them in a way, and if it has a fun theme on top of it, and like you said, the idea itself sounds like it lends itself well to a roll and write. So it's almost, I imagine they were just like, this feels roll and write-ish. Let's just make that too and throw it right in there. So that's fun.
You can pledge for all these different items. If you're looking for just the base game, that's around $40-ish. But if you want to go all in, that's going to be closer to $70.
From Keymaster Games, now we look at Caper Europe. This is a 2-player drafting game. Both players are master thieves competing for the true title of the most mastery of thieves, something like that. You are going to choose from one of 4 cities in Europe. This includes Paris, Barcelona, Rome, and once you are there, each player is going to be playing different thieves to different locations in said city. Once you have played a card from your hand, you will give your hand to your opponent, and then you will pick a card from the new hand, and so on and so forth, like a lot of different drafting games. Once you have chosen, though, you're going to put those cards down to different areas, and then it becomes sort of like an area control game, where if you put certain cards down, they're going to earn you caper points, and they're going to move a little thief meeple, the thiefle they call it, closer to one side or the other. If it's closer to your side at the end of the round, then you have secured that location. Some cards are also gear cards, and those are going to enhance your thieves. So you could play a gear card on one of your thieves to give them some additional benefits or abilities. And there's also going to be special items you're trying to steal at some of these locations that some thieves will be able to steal. And then there's a bit of a set collection aspect where you're getting points for having those, as well as different types of cards at different locations, depending on how they score. An interesting take, I thought, on the drafting mechanic. Drafting, not something we typically would have thought of traditionally as just for two players, but I feel like at this point there's a bunch of great two-player drafting games that's really taken off. And I enjoy that this is not just drafting back and forth and trying to get points. There's also this area control board element to it with kind of a fun, unique theme. And I'm interested to see how exactly those different cities work, what the different locations are like. And it sounds like in the future they might do a caper, other continent in addition to Europe if this is successful.
Now, you talk about being the top thief master or whatever, but tell me, how do they stack up against the thief from Catan?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, there could be some integration there. You could bring that thief in, and they could have a whole crossover element. In this campaign, though, you're not going to get any of that. You just get what I discussed already. For $39, that includes some Kickstarter exclusive goodies, so take a look at the campaign and see what you think.
Gift of Tulips is a game that's all about the Tulip Festival in Holland. During this game, you're going to be getting tulip cards, and you're going to decide what you want to do with them. You have multiple choices. You can A, add them to the contest sheet and sort of trying to make that tulip the more valuable tulip. You can add them to your own collection, your own bouquet, and try to help score more points. Or you can give it away to another opponent to score those points right away. That's important because you're actually going to do 2 actions in your turn, and the first tulip you draw could be any of the 3. Second one, though, can't be whatever the first action is. So, for example, if you draw a tulip that you're not crazy about, probably pretty good to maybe give it away because you can score some points right away. And then your next action, if it's a good tulip, you don't have to feel bad that you already took the first tulip. And at the end of the game, though, there's actually going to be some tulips set aside. They're going to be added to that central victory point thing that I talked about earlier. Now, whichever has the most tulips in is going to be in first, second, third, pretty much how they score those tulips. And whoever has the most of those kinds of tulips are going to score the points for that place. And whoever has the most victory points will be the winner. This is a really interesting, simple card game that's all about deciding how do you divvy up your resources. Do you want to try to make sure that you have the most of the orange tulip, but that means you also want to make sure there are also the most orange tulips in the center table area. And because there's those hidden tulips, you never quite know how things are going to go out. And of course, giving tulips are going to give you points right away, but if you give your opponent too many of the green tulips, for example, all of a sudden green's first place, you sort of gave them victory. So it's really about balancing your resources in a simple but understandable card game.
I think we may set a record today for most times saying the word tulips in the span of a 2-minute period. I really like the look of this game as well, though. I like that there is the potential for kind of mind games to it because you can play some of those tulips face down. You might want someone to think that a certain color isn't as valuable as it really is, or you might even give someone a tulip that maybe is good because you want them to think you don't care about it or something. Like there's a lot of potential meta things going on that I think is a nice layer on top of what could be just a very basic, simple kind of set collection game, has some more depth going on to it that seems intriguing.
What I would love to do is to give cards to my opponents so they sort of have an equal amount of each one. And they're like, so once their turn, they have a hard time going like, I can't just go in all in orange because Will gave me a blue. So now I have 2 of everything and I don't know what I want. So my goal is just to make opponents harder for them to make choices.
That's the strat.
And confuse them. If you want to back this game and try it out, you can get it for $19. Once again, that's Gift of Tulips.
Lastly, we're looking at Dawn from Green Meadow Games. This is a competitive or cooperative, depending on what type of player you are, perhaps, game, in which you are building up different buildings and trying to protect your city from various threats that are attacking you. But some players may be working just for themselves rather than for the good of the group. The way it works is you have a set of cards, different types of colored resources, and on your turn you can play those cards to various places, most often to buildings that are on the table, and your cards are played face down. So you might be playing cards to help complete that building, or you might be playing cards to sabotage it. At the end of the round, you're going to shuffle those cards up, reveal what was in them, and find out if the building was built successfully or not, but you may or may not know exactly who put in which cards. You're going to have to try to deduce that for yourself. And at the end of the game, there are going to be some grand buildings, or great buildings, I think they call them, that are built up over the course of the game that stay out. So those are a little harder to build, and they're going to be worth more points. Now, there are also treasure cards, and you can keep some of those treasure cards. And if any player has more than 6 at the end of the game, that means they have decided they're going all out for themselves, and whoever has the most treasure wins. But if every player has less than 6, that means they've decided to work together, and in that case, you're trying to get a certain point threshold based on all of the buildings you've successfully built together. So you might start out early on trying to work together, but not think that you're going to make it, so you go out for yourself in order to win. Or maybe you do that from the very beginning just because you're selfish and that's what you want to do. An interesting take, I think, on that kind of hidden role-ish. It's not really a hidden role game because you aren't assigned teams. It's up to you if you want to have a hidden role or not, which I think is maybe a little bit more interesting sometimes than just being told you're good or being told that you're bad. So I thought that was cool, and it does remind me a little bit of, it's the kind of thing like you saw in the Resistance where you're putting cards into a mission, so to speak, but there's a little more going on. It's not just a pass or fail. Some of them will require certain types of resources to either build a building or fend off a threat. So there's more going on depending on what's in your hand and how you're reading your opponents.
The treasure cards, are they open? Like, will I all of a sudden see like, oh, that player's got 3 treasures already?
No, you won't know. You won't know if they're hoarding them or not until the end.
All right.
For $20, you can try Dawn out, decide which side of the fence you're going to be on, or you can pay a little extra for special editions and some other stuff too.
Those were our picks from you, but we've got some bonuses for you because this month has been crazy with Kickstarters. We've got a whole bunch of preview videos for you to check out. First off, we have Doomlings, pretty much a crazy party game about evolving your little Doomling before the end of the world. Then we've got Meeples and Monsters from AEG. This is a big Meeple bag building game in which you'll be not only adding Meeple to your bag and crafting it, but upgrading what the Meeple do, so it's not simply just getting certain Meeple into the bag. Then we've also got Dealing Dungeons, which is all about a race to build up your dungeon on the table, not fall off the table, and get the most loot. Finally, you may have seen the Kickstarter, So You've Been Eaten. We haven't tried it yet, but shortly after this recording, we'll actually have the chance to play it and, of course, give you our thoughts. So many of Kickstarters to go around and talk about, so check those out in addition to this if you're looking for the next perfect Kickstarter for you to back.
Yes, you'll want to stay tuned to our channel to check out all those previews and more coming up later in the month. And let us know in the comments section what you're backing from this week, last week, or what you're looking forward to in the future, because there are so many right now to go around. Thank you for watching. My name is Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was Roll for Crits Kickstarter Pickstarter.
We want you to like and subscribe, and if you have the chance, take a look at our Patreon.
Thank you for being a friend. Subscribe to our channel and back again. Okay.